I never imagined that the end of my marriage would look so cinematic. Not just painful, dramatic, public, humiliating, and strangely empowering. My name is Elena. For 12 years, I built a life with a man who loved money more than loyalty. My ex-husband, Daniel, was the kind of man who gave roses on birthdays, but lies on every other day. I didn't want a perfect life, just an honest one. But honesty was the one thing he could never give. The truth came crashing down one evening when I found a hotel bill in his coat. Not just any hotel, the same one where we celebrated our 5th anniversary, and the bill wasn't from a business trip. It was a 2-guest dinner, champagne and rose petals. I sat on the couch for an hour staring at it, my hands trembling, my heart slowly turning into something harder, colder. I didn't want to believe it, but the universe has a way of ripping open the truth when you're too scared to do it yourself. So the next day, when he came home smelling like perfume that wasn't mine, I looked him straight in the eyes and asked, "Do you want to tell me the truth, or should I show you the receipt?" He didn't even deny it. Instead, he sighed, like I was the inconvenience. "Elena, you always overreact. It's not serious. Don't make this dramatic. Not serious. 12 years together." And I was suddenly not serious. Something inside me died in that moment. But something else was born. A woman who would no longer be stepped on. I took off my ring, placed it on the table, and said the words I never imagined saying, "I'm done." The divorce happened fast. He didn't fight it, because he was already planning his life with the mistress, a woman named Serena. He didn't even hide her anymore. She showed up to court with him, wearing diamonds I recognized. My diamonds, the ones I thought I'd misplaced. But the universe wasn't done yet. Daniel, in all his arrogance, forgot one tiny detail. All the credit cards, every single one, were under my name. His business trips, his lunches, his hotel stays, his fancy gifts for Serena, everything had been charged to cards I was legally responsible for, but had full control over. So the day our divorce became official, while he was out celebrating with her, I sat at my dining table, opened my laptop, and calmly clicked, "Cancel, cancel, cancel." All cards, all access. All accounts, everything. I wasn't being petty, I was being free. For weeks I heard nothing from him. I assumed he'd realized what happened and dealt with it. But I was wrong. Daniel had a surprise waiting for me, one that came wrapped in invitations. One morning, as I was sipping my coffee, I received something shiny in the mail. A wedding invitation. Not just any wedding invite, his wedding. To Serena, in a luxury venue. A venue I had once booked for our anniversary before he canceled last minute. On the back of the envelope, written in Serena's handwriting, "We'd love for you to see what you lost." If they expected tears, they were disappointed. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I smiled, because they had no idea what they were walking into. The day of the wedding arrived. I wore a simple, elegant dress, not to impress, just to show that peace looks good on a woman. People stared as I walked in. Some pitied me, some whispered gossip. Daniel's mother hugged me tighter than she ever hugged Serena. But when Daniel saw me, his face paled. "Elena, you came?" he stammered. "Of course," I said softly. I wouldn't miss it for the world. He looked relieved, like he thought I was still the same woman who used to protect him, save him, cover his messes. The ceremony began. Serena walked down the aisle, beaming like she had won the lottery. And in a way she had, just not the prize she expected. Everything seemed perfect, almost too perfect, until the officiant asked them to sign the final wedding documents. Daniel reached into his pocket to take out his wallet, and then it happened. He froze, checked again, then again. He turned pale. "Elena, what did you do?" he whispered. His voice shook. I stepped forward, my heels echoing in the silent hall. And I said the sentence that shattered his entire new life. "Daniel, you're marrying her today, but all your cards were canceled months ago." Gasps filled the room. Serena turned red. The wedding planner dropped her clipboard. His father stood up furious. "What do you mean canceled?" Serena screamed. Daniel looked like the world collapsed at his feet, because everything, the venue, the catering, the rings, the honeymoon, the decorations, everything was charged to cards that no longer existed. The bank had declined every payment. The venue manager stormed in, shouting, "Your transaction failed again, sir. We need full payment now or the wedding stops. Serena spun toward Daniel, her voice shrill. You said you had money. And that's when the truth broke open like glass. He didn't have money, not anymore, because the only person who ever saved him financially was me. And I had finally stopped. The sun was setting when I reached my car, the orange glow reflecting off the windshield like fire. My hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel. I had signed those divorce papers just hours ago, the end of 10 years, the end of loyalty, the end of believing in a man who didn't even hesitate before replacing me. And now the invitations had gone out to their wedding. My ex-husband Samuel and his mistress, the same woman he swore was just a friend, the same woman he spent late nights helping, the same woman who smiled in my home like she wasn't stealing it from underneath me. 2 weeks after our divorce, they were getting married, not even embarrassed, not even pretending to care how obvious it was. When the envelope arrived in my mailbox, I laughed, a bitter, sharp, broken laugh. They actually invited me, not because they respected me, but because they expected me to be small. They expected me to cry in a corner. They expected me to show up so they could show off. But then, fate delivered something else. A folder, delivered by courier. My name written in Samuel's handwriting from years ago. Inside lay documents, financial documents. Very important financial documents. When I divorced Samuel, I had already canceled the cards tied to my name. But now, as I flipped through the pages, I discovered something he forgot, or didn't realize. Half the accounts he used were opened under my credit, my authorizations, my business identity. He had used them for her, vacations, jewelry, private dinners, designer clothes, all with cards tied to my personal credit files. So I had done what any sane person would do. I canceled everything, every card, every account, every access. What I didn't expect was that he never told her. And that little detail would change everything. The venue was a massive white estate, decorated with gold drapes and rose-colored lanterns. Cars lined the driveway, guests laughing as they walked toward the entrance. The sound of clinking glasses floated through the air, along with classical music. Perfect, pretentious, fake, just like their love. I stepped out of my car, wearing a black satin dress, the one Samuel always said made me look too intimidating. Good. Let him be intimidated. Inside the venue, I caught sight of him immediately, standing tall in a navy suit, smiling like a man who had won the lottery. His mistress Clarissa clung to his arm, her white gown shimmering with crystals. She spotted me and smirked. "Look, Samuel," she whispered loudly. "Your ex actually showed up." He stiffened, but forced a polite smile as their guests turned to look at me. Clarissa's mother approached me first, her expression dripping with judgment. "Dear, weren't you supposed to move on?" she asked sweetly. "I did," I replied. "That's why I'm here." A few guests snickered. They thought I meant I still loved him. No, I meant I moved on, from silence. As the ceremony began, I stayed at the back, watching as Samuel recited vows he had once rehearsed with me in our kitchen. Same words, different woman. My stomach twisted, but I wasn't here for heartbreak. I was here for justice. When the officiant said, "If anyone has a reason these two should not be wed, speak now." The universe held its breath. But I didn't speak, not yet. Instead, I watched Clarissa's face turn pale as the wedding planner rushed toward her, whispering something urgent. Her smile vanished. Then Samuel was pulled aside. He glanced at me, suspicion flickering in his eyes. Moments later, chaos erupted. Clarissa snapped, "What do you mean the payment failed? Try again." The wedding coordinator shook her head nervously. "All the transactions are being declined." Samuel frowned. "Impossible. The accounts are closed," I said calmly, stepping forward. Clarissa spun toward me, her makeup trembling. "What did you do?" Samuel stared at me like he'd seen a ghost. I tilted my head. "You really should have paid for your own wedding instead of using credit under my authorization." Gasps rippled through the room. Clarissa's lips parted. You can't do that." I already did. Samuel stepped closer, voice low. "Why would you ruin this? Haven't you humiliated yourself enough?" I laughed softly. "Samuel, I didn't cancel anything to ruin your wedding." I leaned in. "You did that all by yourself." Clarissa's voice rose in desperation. "Fix it! Samuel, fix it!" He turned to her. I can't access the accounts." "You didn't tell me the cards were in her name?" Clarissa screamed, jabbing a finger at me. Guests whispered, phones recorded. The perfect wedding was turning into a live disaster. Clarissa grabbed Samuel's suit. "You said you had money. You said everything was ready. I do have money. She's just being petty." I raised a brow. "Really? Then pay for the venue right now. The coordinator is waiting." They froze. Clarissa's face hardened, twisting with rage and humiliation. "You ruined my day!" she spat at me. I smiled, calm, steady, victorious. "No, Clarissa, today just revealed the truth. And truth doesn't ruin anything, unless the foundation was a lie." Silence. Every guest watched, every camera recorded. And that's when Clarissa made her fatal mistake. She screamed, "This wedding doesn't matter anyway. We only moved it up because—" Samuel's eyes widened in warning, but it was too late. "Because you promised the house. You said once the divorce was done, the house would officially be mine." The room froze. Samuel turned white. "Clarissa, stop!" "She didn't. She canceled the account, Samuel." "What if she cancels the house transfer too? I'm not living in some cheap apartment." A collective gasp. Samuel shot her a look of pure panic. He had promised her the house he had begged me not to include in the divorce filing? My smile slowly sharpened. This was even better than I expected. Clarissa pointed at me, enraged. "You can't keep that house. It's ours." I looked at Samuel, then at her, and whispered the sentence that ended everything. 3 weeks passed after the divorce was finalized. 3 weeks since I walked out of that courtroom with my dignity intact and his credit cards confiscated like weapons taken off a careless criminal. 3 weeks since Daniel officially became her problem. I was finally settling into my new life. Small apartment, quiet mornings, peace that money could never buy. My lawyer said I had every right to feel relieved. But relief was a luxury that didn't last long. Because one afternoon, as I opened my mailbox, I found an envelope so oddly fancy, so unnecessarily decorated, that it could only belong to one type of person. A woman who desperately wanted to prove she had won. I opened it. Inside was a wedding invitation. "Daniel and Sienna, joyfully invite you." The rest blurred as anger tightened my jaw. My ex-husband, my ex-husband's mistress, the woman he cheated with for 8 months, inviting me to their wedding. I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. Who sends a wedding invitation to the woman whose marriage they destroyed? Someone with an agenda. Someone who wants a reaction. Someone who thinks I'm still wounded. I placed the card on the table and sat down. No way was Daniel behind this. He wasn't bold enough. This felt like Sienna's handiwork, cruel, strategic, narcissistic, and she wanted something. I learned what that something was sooner than I expected. That night, I got a message from an unknown number. "We hope you'll attend. It would mean a lot." I stared at the screen. A lot? To whom? For what? My fingers curled. The words tasted bitter before they even left my mouth. I typed back, "Why would you want me there?" The reply came instantly, as if she'd been waiting. "Because Daniel owes you closure." Closure? That was a word manipulators used. And Sienna was no exception. But before I could respond, another text appeared. "Also, you deserve to see what real happiness looks like." There it was, the motive. The venom behind the invitation. It wasn't about closure. It was about humiliation. She wanted me to attend, watch them kiss, smile, promise each other loyalty, promises he had broken with me. She wanted to see my pain. She wanted to win a game only she was playing. But then I remembered something. Daniel's credit cards, the ones he once used so carelessly, the ones I had canceled right after the divorce. Those were their lifeline. He had no access to the money he once flaunted. And Sienna? She didn't have half the funds she pretended to have. Something clicked. Why invite the ex-wife to the wedding? Because they needed something financial. Because Daniel had debts. Because his fancy lifestyle had collapsed. Because Sienna didn't want her guests to see the truth. I leaned back, suddenly amused. She wasn't trying to show off. She was trying to hide something. 2 days later, I found out exactly what. A mutual friend, or rather someone who used to be a friend, accidentally spilled the truth over lunch. "They're struggling," she whispered across the table. "Bookings, caterers, venue payments, all delayed. Daniel told everyone you took everything." "He told everyone?" I raised an eyebrow. She winced. "Well, yes. He said you drained him." "Drained him? The man who emptied my savings for his failed business ventures? The man who bought Sienna jewelry while I paid our bills?" I shook my head. Then she said something that made the entire situation click like a lock falling open. They think you might help them, financially, or at least feel guilty enough to contribute. That's why you were invited. I stared at her. That's why? That's why. Not closure, not respect, not reconciliation. Money. They wanted money. The anger I felt was cold, sharp, controlled, the kind that made a person dangerous. I'm going, I said. She looked shocked. You are? Yes, and I'll wear something nice. And I'll smile, and I'll congratulate them. But, I continued, the sentence I deliver will change everything. On the afternoon of the wedding, I arrived early, dressed simply but elegantly. Not to impress, to unsettle. People whispered the moment they saw me. That's her, the ex-wife. She looks so calm. Daniel avoided eye contact. Sienna approached like a queen in a cheap crown. You came, she said, sugary sweet. Of course, I replied. Wouldn't miss it. She smiled, victorious, she thought. I smiled back, because she had no idea what was coming. The ceremony began, guests watched. Vows were exchanged with dramatic flair. Everything was perfect, perfectly fake. Then came the reception, the moment when the bride and groom mingled with guests. The moment people brought gifts or financial envelopes, that's when I walked toward the stage. Daniel stiffened, Sienna straightened with a smirk. I held the microphone lightly, and then I said the sentence, the one that would shatter their facade, expose their lies, and redefine the entire wedding. Before I congratulate the happy couple, I just want everyone to know. Every head turned. That every credit card Daniel used to pay for this wedding was canceled by me weeks ago. So if anyone here expects to get paid tonight, you won't. Gasps. Whispers chaos. Daniel froze. Sienna's smile cracked like glass. The room erupted, and that was only the beginning. I walked into the wedding hall with the same calmness a storm has before it breaks open the sky. People turned, whispering, shocked to see me, the ex-wife whose life they thought had been destroyed. But I wasn't destroyed. I was rebuilt. Daniel stood at the altar in a suit he definitely didn't pay for, because I had canceled every credit card the day our divorce papers were finalized. His smile froze when he saw me. His mistress, Serena, gripping her bouquet like it could shield her, stepped slightly away from him. Good. That meant the guilt was settling in. I didn't come here begging. I didn't come here crying. I came because he had taken everything from me, except my voice. And today he was about to hear it. I walked straight toward the stage, heels tapping like war drums. The room fell silent. Even the music faded because the DJ, wide-eyed, didn't know if continuing would get him fired or killed. Daniel forced a smile. Why are you here? He hissed under his breath. His jaw was tight, his eyes begging me not to make a scene. But he had made one out of my life. Now it was my turn. I'm here, I said, lifting the envelope in my hand, to deliver something you forgot. Serena scoffed. What could he possibly forget? We're getting married. I smiled politely. Oh, I know. In fact, this is exactly about that. I opened the envelope slowly, deliberately, letting the tension stretch like a bowstring. Inside was a stack of papers Daniel recognized instantly. The blood drained from his face. Prenup violation documents, evidence of his affair, and a legal notice. He whispered, voice cracking. Where did you get those? You really thought you were the only one with access to lawyers? I asked. Sweetheart, I built your career. I managed your accounts. I kept your secrets. You thought I wouldn't keep copies? A ripple of shock spread through the guests. Family, co-workers, friends, all staring at him with betrayal. Serena's face turned red. This means nothing. We're already getting married. Not anymore, I interrupted softly. I stepped forward, facing Daniel directly. You violated the prenup when you cheated, which means everything you tried to hide, the house, the business stakes, the stocks, all revert back to me. Gasps exploded around the hall. Daniel shook his head violently. No, you can't. Oh, I already did, I whispered. Which is why all your bank accounts got frozen this morning. Silence. Complete, devastating silence. Serena dropped her bouquet. Daniel's knees nearly buckled. But I wasn't done, not yet. I raised my voice so the entire hall could hear. Daniel, you mocked me. You humiliated me. You thought losing you would break me. But all it did was free me and expose you. His father stood up abruptly from the front row. Is this true, Daniel? Daniel's mouth opened, but no words came out. He just stared at me, panicked, like a child caught stealing. I continued. And since you used marital funds for your affair, I paused, savoring the moment. You owe me restitution, a very, very large sum, Serena snapped. This is ridiculous. He doesn't have to pay anything. He doesn't. Actually, I said calmly, he does. And since you used my card to shop during their little affair, I locked eyes with her. You're legally involved as well. Serena took a step back, shaking her head. No, that's not. Daniel, tell her. But Daniel couldn't speak. The man who once boasted he'd upgrade his life after me now couldn't afford the wedding cake sitting behind him. A murmur rose through the guests, judgmental, sharp, unforgiving. I let the envelope fall at his feet. This, I said softly, is your real wedding gift. Then I leaned closer and whispered the sentence he will remember for the rest of his life. You should have never underestimated the woman who built you. I turned away. I walked out with my head high, and behind me the wedding fell apart like a collapsing house of cards. But the story wasn't over, not even close. The wedding hall was eerily silent after Elena's revelation. For a moment it felt as if time itself had frozen. Guests looked around, stunned, whispering frantically, trying to process what had just happened. Cameras were out, phones recording every stunned expression, every frozen smile, every subtle gasp. Daniel sank into the nearest chair, his knees trembling beneath him. The weight of humiliation pressed down on him like a physical force. Elena's presence had turned his proud, carefully staged celebration into chaos within seconds. His smug confidence, so evident just minutes ago, was now gone, replaced by fear, panic, and disbelief. Serena clutched her bouquet like it could shield her, her face drained of color. She opened her mouth to protest, but the room's gaze silenced her. The whispers, the shocked stares, the audible gasps, every eye was on her, judging her complicity. Elena's voice rang out clearly, calm but powerful, cutting through the murmurs. Do you realize what this means? She asked, addressing both Daniel and Serena. Every asset, every account, every penny you thought you could hide. Legally, it's all mine now. Every fraudulent transaction, every violation of our prenup, every deceitful act, fully documented. The guests' murmurs grew louder. Phones clicked, capturing the moment that Daniel and Serena could no longer control. Social media would soon explode with footage and photos of this scandalous wedding drama. Elena's calm authority contrasted sharply with Daniel's visible panic. Daniel's father, a man known for his quiet, measured demeanor, rose from the front row. His gaze was stern, piercing through the shame. Daniel, is this true? Have you really treated Elena this way? In front of all these people? Daniel's mouth opened, then closed. He tried to respond, but no words would form. His carefully constructed facade had crumbled. Elena had anticipated this. She had prepared meticulously, and now the full force of her strategy was taking hold. You owe her everything, his father continued, pointing directly at Daniel. Restitution is not optional. It is your responsibility. Serena, you are complicit. Using marital funds and benefiting from deception makes you equally accountable. Serena's face turned a deeper shade of red. She tried to argue, but Elena's calm, commanding tone dominated the room. Every word she spoke was deliberate, measured, and irreversible. You mocked me, you humiliated me. You thought losing you would break me, Elena said, turning toward Daniel. But all it did was free me and expose you for what you truly are. A ripple of shock and whispers went through the guests. The tension was palpable. Daniel's face reflected pure panic. The man who once controlled Elena's life now had no control over his own. Elena reached into her clutch and pulled out a small stack of documents, prenup violation records, financial evidence, and transaction histories. She let them fall at Daniel's feet. The papers fluttered like fallen leaves, silent witnesses to his duplicity. You see this? She asked, her voice steady and commanding. Every lie, every manipulation, every attempt to cover your tracks is here. And now it's all public. There's no hiding, no excuses, no pretending it didn't happen. Serena's hands trembled. You can't, this isn't fair. We're supposed to be married. Elena smiled faintly, a mix of pity and triumph. Marriage is built on trust, honesty, and respect. You both violated every principle, and now you face the consequences. The guests reacted, some whispering about Daniel's arrogance, some staring at Serena's complicity. The social power he had thought he wielded had evaporated. Elena's strategic calm had taken the upper hand completely. Daniel tried one last time, pleading, "Elena, we can work something out. Please don't ruin everything." "No, Daniel," Elena said firmly. "You ruined everything when you betrayed me, humiliated me, and thought you could take what was mine. I am not here to negotiate. I am here to reclaim what is legally and rightfully mine." She turned to the shocked guests, her gaze sweeping across the room. "This is what happens when deceit meets accountability. Let this be a lesson, not just to them, but to anyone who believes they can manipulate, cheat, and escape justice." The murmurs grew louder, some clapping quietly, others shaking their heads in disbelief. The wedding, which had started as a celebration of love, had become a spectacle of public humiliation and undeniable truth. Elena's heels clicked against the floor as she walked toward the exit. Every step was deliberate, a physical manifestation of her regained power and control. Daniel remained slumped, defeated. Serena clutched her bouquet helplessly. Their life together, which had seemed so perfect, was now a spectacle of ruin. As Elena left the hall, she felt a sense of liberation, unlike anything she had ever experienced. Legal action would follow, restitution would be enforced, and the fallout would leave Daniel and Serena forever changed. But for now, she had reclaimed her power. She whispered to herself as the doors closed behind her, "Never underestimate the woman who knows your secrets." The days after the wedding were chaotic, but Elena remained calm. She had anticipated every possible reaction from Daniel and Serena, and she knew that her meticulous preparation had left them no way to recover. Emails, messages, and even calls from distant relatives flooded her inbox, asking if she was okay. But she was more than okay. She was empowered. Daniel's reputation collapsed almost immediately. The images and videos from the wedding spread like wildfire on social media. Former colleagues whispered, friends distanced themselves, and even acquaintances who had never been close now shared Elena's story, praising her intelligence, calmness, and strategic action. The man who had once flaunted his control was now publicly humiliated. Serena, too, became a cautionary tale, a symbol of complicity and betrayal. Elena focused on her own life. She rebuilt her finances, pursued personal projects she had postponed, and invested her energy in relationships that brought her respect and joy. Every day she felt lighter, more confident, and freer. The anger she had felt in the early months after the divorce transformed into clarity and determination. The legal proceedings were swift. With her prenup violation documentation, bank statements, and records of financial misconduct, Elena ensured that all of Daniel's hidden assets were legally returned to her. Houses, stocks, and personal funds all reverted back. She no longer feared financial sabotage or manipulation. Every step she had taken during her divorce had fortified her position, ensuring that she could never be undermined again. Serena tried repeatedly to contact her, sending emails and messages filled with pleas, threats, and desperate attempts to negotiate. Elena ignored them all. Any engagement with Serena would have been wasted energy and a chance for manipulation. Elena had no interest in negotiating with someone who had proven herself untrustworthy. Daniel attempted to salvage his public image, reaching out to friends, family, and former colleagues, but the evidence was undeniable. The videos, photos, and legal documents left no room for excuses. His attempts at redemption were futile, and his pride remained in tatters. One evening, as Elena sat in her new apartment overlooking the city, she reflected on the entire ordeal. From the moment she canceled the cards to the dramatic reveal at the wedding, she realized that true empowerment came not from anger, but from strategy, preparation, and unwavering self-confidence. Revenge might have felt satisfying in the moment, but long-term liberation came from reclaiming her life with dignity. Months later, Daniel filed for bankruptcy due to legal fines and mismanaged finances, while Serena disappeared from public view entirely. Elena, meanwhile, flourished. She pursued projects she had dreamed of for years, connected with people who truly valued her, and embraced a life defined by her choices, not by the betrayal she had suffered. Elena did not gloat. She did not relish their downfall. Her satisfaction came from justice, from reclaiming her life, and from knowing she had acted with intelligence and dignity. Every calculated move had been about empowerment, not humiliation. She reflected on the lessons learned. Patience, preparation, and strategic action are far more powerful than impulsive anger. True strength is quiet and deliberate, not loud and reckless. Her confidence was no longer dependent on anyone else. It was hers, fully and completely. Years later, Elena occasionally heard whispers about Daniel's attempts to rebuild, but they no longer affected her. She had faced betrayal, deception, and humiliation, and emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient. She had reclaimed her identity, her financial security, and her dignity. Elena's journey taught her that empowerment comes from preparation, self-respect, and decisive action. She had turned betrayal into strategy, humiliation into a lesson, and fear into confidence. And as she looked out at the city skyline, she realized that her life was now defined by her own choices, not by the actions of those who had tried to undermine her. In the end, one decisive act at the wedding had changed everything. But the true power lay in how Elena lived her life afterward. She had reclaimed her freedom, her authority, and her future. And in that victory, she found peace, strength, and unshakable confidence. Elena smiled, knowing that she had risen above every obstacle, every betrayal, and every lie. Her life was her own, and she would never let anyone take that away again.